I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision, I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision, I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady. And he's pedal to the metal, go, go, go!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to PSGL. It is Tier 4, and we are at Round 4, coincidentally, as my colleague George, who is next to me, he is here. His camera's just dead.
Here.
And I think he
You're
broke
gonna have to relink it. I've just sent you a new link. Yeah, I did.
How are you doing today, Bob?
I took the L. Well, clearly not very well. I'm taking L's left, right, and centre before the broadcast has even started, so I wouldn't really worry too hard about it. But yeah, I'm okay, I guess. Like, just doing fine. Busy week, busy time for some gamers on some Formula 1 as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just by the way, your microphone is now double micing with your new camera. It's not your day, but that being said, as I said, it's round 4. We're heading to Montreal, Canada, a track that is, in my opinion, I think it's a gorgeous track, active for overtaking. It's always had a history behind it, particularly turn 14, as known as the Wall of Champions. And of course, it's had its dramas, not only at turn 14, turn 4 itself had the action between Vettel and Hamilton, which, to be honest, I'm going to sit here and say Vettel should have won that race. But that is for anyone's opinion.
Well, let's just have a quick Google search. How many races has Lewis Hamilton won? Okay, it says that he's got 103 race victories. In my opinion, and that is the correct opinion, he has 102. Because, let's be honest, the real robbery in Formula 1 was Canada 2019. It was not Abu Dhabi 2021. Just putting it out there now. That's my controversial take for the day. I will make sure that I have no more moving forward. I think the only other thing that I can say that will be remotely contentious will be that I don't really like this track, both to race and to watch. In real life, it doesn't really present much in way of good racing. You get a couple of good examples like you've just listed, but on the whole, it's only really good when it's very wet. One of my favorite all-time races is like Canada 2011, I think it was. Was it when Button won?
Bring joy to my heart. Yes, as a McLaren fan, that was a beautiful race, seeing Vettel go wide and Button sweeping through to take the victory. You make me happy.
Yeah, well, as a Vettel fan, it wasn't really my biggest and proudest moment, but we live. Either which way, I think we're actually about to get underway with some Canada racing of our own. It might be wet, it might be dry. We'll find out as soon as we get on started. We've got a couple of championship protagonists to look out for as well. We've got some new drivers that have entered the foray since last week, or since the week before. We had a couple of drivers that were promoted into Formula 3. So I'll try and take a quick look as to what these standings are quickly, and then I'll feed back to you.
Yeah, and as we head over to Montreal, it is a 2.71 mile circuit with 14 turns and 3 DRS zones, critically aiding the vision of overtaking. Of course, whether that works or not, we'll find out in the coming moments. As you can see on your screen, 16 seconds left on the clock before we start qualifying. Drivers from last week that definitely shone. Sven Schumacher is a name that I just saw instantly. What a performance he had last week, and are we going to see some of that racing from him again?
Well, I'm not currently, because as F1 is such a brilliantly put together game, it has just crashed for me. I'll be back in momentarily. That's the perks of having a bit of a behemoth PC, is that I'll be in no time. But aside from that, yeah, I do hope that we can have some good racing. And yeah, like you said, last week was really interesting because we got to see the ascension of Sven Schumacher into the ranks. And on top of that, we also got to see some good racing out of the McLaren in Milan Meyer, who, if I'm not mistaken, took victory last time out too. And that has basically put him into what is a net P2 in the championship. Current championship leader still, after having not raced for a week, was, if I'm not mistaken, Leonard Goetze, having won in Spain at the start of the season and come second in Bahrain. As such, he's still top of the times, but he got promoted into Formula 3, and now we have Milan Meyer and Rishan, who currently sits top of the table.
Yeah, and Rishan has I don't know if he's actually read the comment, he has a little bet with me. I don't know if he accepted it. Yeah, accepted it now. He's looking to win, otherwise he's posting the last thing on his camera roll. Just a little incentive. But out on track, Patrick Hadler. Patrick, well, a good driver, solid, and definitely shows his pace in these higher tiers, getting himself in the mid-pack usually. Now, being F4, it's a bit lower than where I've seen him in tier-wise. I'd be intrigued to see what he does in this F4 region. Is he going to be nearer the top, or are we going to see him again fighting for those mid points? But it's not too long till we get the first laps coming in, and Yeah, let's just quickly talk about this track and the heritage that this holds. I've mentioned about Turn 14, the Wall of Champions, and the development, how brilliant it is. But I know you hate it, but why? Why? What about this track don't you like?
I think it's a lazy track layout. The way that I see tracks is I've been a racing purist my entire life. And growing up watching motorcycle Grand Prix racing more than car racing when I was much younger, you kind of get an appreciation for tracks that were designed to be flowing. This is part of the reason why I also dislike Monza, or at least the first sector of Monza, is because I think it's lazy track making when you create a track and you want it to be like quick, but not too quick that it's dangerous. You just slap a chicane in the middle. And this track is all chicanes. I would much prefer to have some longer radius corners, potentially carrying some more corner speed or some higher variety. But as it is, all the corners are practically chicanes, and you have just one big hairpin at the top of the track, which to me doesn't really make for very good racing because you can't overtake into chicanes too well.
Okay. I hear you. But as you mentioned, it does lead for a quick track, and Patrick Hadler will be the first to cross the line. What is it going to be today? We've had a couple of drivers saying the 110s are where we're looking, but it's going to be a 109.7 as a baseline. Le Manon is going to go and beat that. It gets beaten by Mino even further. So where are we looking today then, George?
I'm not sure really, but I'd imagine it's going to carry on ramping up like this. Never mind. I was going to suggest that we would be down in the low 109s, but even now seeing that lap from Tomas Gal, it makes me feel that a 109 flat, potentially pushing into a high 108, could be possible for these Division 4 drivers. At the moment, though, with a 109.260 and Tomas Gal being the only person in that particular remit, I would have said that there's probably a bit of a gap back to him at the moment, and he might have been pushing that one really hard to the extent that it might be hard to catch a lap quite so close to it moving forward. We'll see how it ends up panning out. We saw it last week, didn't we? At Zandvoort, we saw, I think it was Sven Schumacher post a really considerably decent time to start things off. And then almost immediately, that time didn't really fall. Everybody else tried to get close and certainly tried very hard, but in the end, it took a good couple of runs before that time fell.
It might take a couple of runs. Alexander Johansson going a bit squirmish in the exit of turn 9. But I feel it is possible. That lap time is definitely beatable. We have seen drivers, and I know, okay, the top end tier 1 drivers are dipping into the 108.7s, I want to say. So I wouldn't put it past, I think it's, 108.8s, sorry. I wouldn't say it's too far away to say that we could reach down there, but as you mentioned, that is a sterling lap, being 0.3 faster than the rest of the pack. It's going to be hard as Alexander Johansson goes into second. Are you back in the game?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've been back in the game for a while, yeah.
Okay,
I've
good.
been in for here for a bit. Yeah, that 109.594, whilst it looks good on paper, when you really just take the nameplates off and look at the times in between, you still got a long way to go, a lot of ground to make up. Tomas Gal has really thrown down the gauntlet here with that time already, and there is another entry to the top of the timing sheets, but still not quite enough. A 10th faster than his teammate Alexander Johansson, but Roshan seems to only be able to treble P2. Still another 2/10 back worth of Tomas Gal, so a long way to go. Last week's race winner Milan Mayer also posts a 5.99. Sven Schumacher on an outlap at present. I'm trying to look for where our big name players are going to be coming from. Istvan Nagy might be worth taking a look at, and it seems that you already are.
Yeah, we're already looking at it. He purpled the first, purpled the second. Whether that is true or not, we don't fully know, but it's looking confident. It's looking good, using all the exit of turn 11. Turn 10 into turn 11 as he heads down the back straight, reaching speeds of about 210 kilometers an hour. It is long, but it's not long enough to reach the top speeds of these cars. Careful not to cut too much of the chicane and invalidate, and cross the line at 108, 109. It's a 109.6. It puts him 6th fastest. And let's jump to Sven Schumacher. A fireball he was last week.
Yeah, in the end, it did get a bit scuffed for him, if I recall, towards the end of the race, with his tyre exploding on the final corner, thus losing him a podium. Now, again, if these map sectors are to be believed, that was purple. But again, as we saw on that just last time round from Isfan Nagy, they can often be a bit of a lie. So let's not take them at their face value. Let's not hold that one as gospel. But we'll see roughly where he's at comparative on sector times to everybody else as he comes out of this second sector. So a 41-3 through the second sector. Looks good for the time being. Gets it nicely pulled down to the apex there as well before getting the power down for this back straight. Like you mentioned, high speeds, options for slipstreams and DRS. This will be where most of the overtaking gets done on this track. And into the braking zone for the final chicane. Got to make sure, like you said, not to cut too much of it. Gets it nailed nicely. Doesn't tap the wall on the exit. Decent run to the line. Where are we going to be at? Ooh. It's a 109.427.
It's getting better. It's getting better. There's still a gap between Thomas Gale from the rest of the drivers. So that gap can slowly close down. The only driver who's not set a lap time is Andre Molnar. Molnar is doing his lap now. So what can he do? Technically, we're now coming into run number 2.
Yeah, this is run 2 time.
So he's invalidated on his first one. Let's see what he can do in his second one.
Well, I'm more interested at the moment to see whether Thomas Gale can push his any further. He's currently on a lap at the top of the timing screens, as you will well be aware of. But I'm just interested to see where he's at in terms of if he's going to be improving. Because if he does... Oh, there we go. Never mind then. We can hop back on with his teammate and see what's going on down there. Oh, big squirm on the rear, actually, as soon as I switch over to Andre Molnar. Getting it a little bit litty out of that chicane. Now coming into the hairpin at the top of the circuit. Now just going to try and get this exit very, very nicely done. It's a bit difficult because you're constantly trying to steer the wheel just a tiny bit. And as such, that can make it very, very complex. That was a bit close. To try and get the power down. But thankfully, does it quite well this time around. No issues on traction. Now just got to try and bang it through this final chicane without invalidating or tapping the wall. Has done it cleanly. It is a clean lap, but is it a quick lap? It seems like it is. It's good enough for 4th place.
Did I just see Daniel Kelson join this game?
Yeah, Kelson.
I'm pretty certain Daniel Kelson, a man who is on fire at the moment in his career. Like a dip at the start of the season in another league, and he's had a good start, dipped. He's on the rise. If that man actually is racing today, ladies and gentlemen, you're gonna have joy to watch if he stays, whether or not. But that being said, let's look at the drivers we actually have.
He's already left the session.
Oh,
he's already left the session.
I got hopeful.
It was a mistake on the join. I think he's in a higher division.
I thought so. That man is tier 2 in a different league. But Alexander Johansson trying to improve as a Ferrari driver. His teammate Rashan just starting his lap, purple, but it's 2 tenths quicker, which will put him currently round about P2, maybe P3. Saven's got a good position here where it might... No, I think he will take P2 with the current standings at the moment. Coming into the final chicane, turns 13 and 14 to the Wall of Champions. We say it every time, careful of the wall. The rear end kicks out. He's going to try for the line. How much has he lost? He's lost a bit, and his lap does not improve.
Yeah, it would have been good if he actually didn't tap the wall with his rear right there. It was a bit of an awkward contact. Obviously, the rear stepped out a little bit after jumping the curb slightly. And then obviously hitting the wall never does you any favours. And exactly what happened there for Mr. Johansson. Didn't quite get that one sorted, but at the top of the timing screens, we have had another contributor. It is now Menno, who seems to have put it just 600ths behind Thomas Gale at the top of the timing screens. So that's a 109.321. So we're getting a little bit closer. He is also a 10.5 clear of Sven Schumacher a little bit further back. So we'll get to see just who is going to be troubling the top of the timing screens now, because run 3 is about to start for most drivers, unless they're already on it. You can see on your screens that Jane Tripkov, teammate to Sven Schumacher in the Haas car, trying to finish this lap, powered down relatively nicely, and now it's just going to be about straight lining it in towards that final chicane. So far, it is looking so very good with that rear wing open. It seems like a decent lap for now. Surely has to be an improvement on the 109.722. We saw promise from Tripkov.
Oh, it's
no, it's not promising at all. Oh, that's the danger. That's the danger of taking too much curb on that chicane. We saw Johansson's rear step out, and now we see Tripkov step into the wall on the other side of the track. Exactly reminiscent of Romain Grosjean some years ago.
Yeah, and as that well, I wouldn't say fatal, the critical crash. Both McLarens have improved. Miller Mayer goes into 5th. It's Van Nage goes into 8th. So, I would say capitalizing under the yellows, but we don't enforce that rule. So then Schumacher coming up to the line is improved slightly. I don't know if that was his lap or if he has. I think he has improved very slightly.
I'm pretty sure that might well have just been his outlap. I'm not totally certain though, because I don't see the red light flashing on the rear of his car now, which would indicate that he's not harvesting or not got any ERS off. So he should be deploying here, and he does look to be sending it. Yeah, he is. Okay, good. We're in for a treat then, hopefully, with that 100th improvement from Sven Schumacher. It's going to be a tight one, taking that shortest possible distance towards the next chicane, throwing it now over the curb, making sure not to invalidate too much. You don't want to take too much on the left-hand side either, because it can unsettle the car with the distribution of height between the left and the right-hand side of the car. Now, swinging it into the hairpin at the top of the circuit, gets the power down. 4th gear is where you have to go to find traction at that corner. Despite there being that little jink to the left that doesn't really constitute a corner, it still provides an obstacle for finding traction. And so far, it's going to be a decent lap, but is it going to be troubling the top runners at the moment? Lots of curb taken, and as such, nearly ends up in the same place as his teammate. Huge tank slapper coming out of the Wall of Champions, and as such, the lap will not be good enough.
Yeah, just too much out of the corner. When you want to play risk and reward, as mentioned, there is a risk. And he did go too much. And it's so easy to do on that corner. Turn the game will allow, and what the game will go, no, that's too much. As we watch Andre, oh no, he is in the pits. Glitched into the pits, lovely.
You want to have a look here at Tomas Gal. His lap was currently looking to be an improvement on his previous personal best. I'm not too sure whether it's going to be any better this time around. I didn't quite catch the split at the end of the second sector, but by the end of the first sector, he was 200ths up on his previous best time. Is he? He's going to get caught by traffic. Traffic catches him out there. I'm not sure who that was dawdling on the racing line in towards the final chicane. I think it was Mirandix. And as such, that really kind of screws the pooch for Tomas Gal.
Talking of Mirandix, he is the only one on track to set a lap. 4 minutes left, so going off pace, off the rhythm, Mirandix will try and set another lap time. Last laps really will come in, I would say, you could probably go out at about 2 minutes and still get round the track and put in your last lap time. So we'll see some drivers coming out maybe a little bit earlier, get the lap in, see what they can do. But realistically, 2 minutes is when we see a flood of cars coming out for the last session of qualifying. And Mirandix, it's decent, it's punchy, but I don't feel this is really going to compete to the top. I don't know what you think, but it's not looking strong.
Mirandix has been a bit hit and miss this season quite generally anyway. We saw some good progress from him in Spain, and then it all kind of went away towards Zandvoort. Didn't really see much from him, and the same again in Bahrain. So it'll be good for him to have a good performance here, but at the moment it doesn't really look like it's going to come into fruition. This lap is not really going to be doing much to trouble anybody important, and it does only leave him in 11th. So we'll start to get some drivers now coming out of the pit lane for their final run. It'll be interesting to keep track of who's on what lap at what time, so it might get a bit hectic and we might miss some stuff, but bear with it, because it is going to be an interesting one, that is for sure. We've got a lot of drivers who are currently chasing down one lap time from Tomas Gal that was set on the first run around this Montreal circuit, and as such, they're all going to be hunting him quite aggressively moving out of this final run. Tomas Gal, one of the first drivers out on track, actually, to try and complete his final run of the session. And everybody else now starting laps 2. Alexander Johansson, I think, has just started one, and you're already on board. We'll see what it's going to be. Oh, in fact, he's finishing one, as a matter of fact,
no,
right?
He's
oh,
starting.
it's not a good lap.
He's starting.
It was not a good lap. There we go.
Yeah, no, he's starting his lap for sure. He's going to be the first driver out of the whole pack who will be starting a lap. There's a couple of weird glitches on the screen that's saying other drivers started earlier. Nope, I can guarantee you it's this man right here. Alexander Johansson, eyes are on you as he gets very close to the wall of turn 4. I think he might have touched, but he's holding, he's lost momentum. He's 4 tenths down, so that is not going to work for him. Who's next in the line? It's going to be Itz Van Nage. He's going to be the next driver up the road. Is he on a competitive lap? It's looking strong. No flashing lights. So make the assumption He's putting the pedal to the metal, and you can see as he goes through turn 9 how much they cut of that corner to the point it almost looks like all 4 wheels are over, but 1 wheel is just on that white line. What can he put down as he floors it through the exit of turn 10, round 11, we said, not even a corner, and achieving just shy of 200 miles an hour, braking into turn 13, clip as much of the 2 apexes, and he's gone over the line. That's not going to be a lap time for him.
No, and interestingly enough, Tomascal has been impeded by traffic the majority of this lap, so we'll see where it ends up with him. I doubt it's going to be too much of an improvement, but if it is, it will be barnstorming, and it is the same lap time, isn't it?
Wow, yeah, no improvement. It's literally
the
identical.
Exact same lap time. Wow. I've not seen that before, ever. I've seen numerous drivers get the same lap time, but not the same driver put the same lap time. So just in case you thought it was a fluke, by the way, Tomascal lays down the gauntlet and says, no, I can do this one quite consistently. I can do this all day. And then really it's up to the remaining drivers now to try and catch on up. Menno currently on a decent lap, but he's just started that one. You're a bit further around with Milan Mayer at present. Not sure what's happening there. Thomas Laminen also on a lap 2. He's about to finish this one up, as by the looks of things. It's a decent run through that chicane. You always feel like they're going to just straight line into the wall, but they do get those cars turned. And it's going to be 1,000ths faster from Thomas Laminen. That's not going to be what he'd have wanted.
No, and Milan Mayer had to go, and he was lucky enough to be able to recharge his battery just enough to go for 1 more shot. So he's actually done 2 laps on those sets of tyres. Menno, he's trying to see if he can clench pole position here. DRS wing is open, crosses the line. No improvement there. The Ferrari driver is that of Rishan. Comes across the line next. He's looking to improve, but no further improvement as well. How's Milan doing? Milan's again invalidated his lap, so nothing from that as well. Thomas Le Mans is not going to improve. Patrick Hadler.
Andre Molnar.
Not going to improve. Molnar improves. Andrew Corpory. No, he's not going to improve.
Everyone's just diving in. It's over, I think. I think that's session complete. Nicola Ileda was the last person to try and finish up. He's come in behind. Obviously, Laminen already finished his lap, so he'll be diving into the pit. So that's your grid, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tomascal who threw down the gauntlet early, and as such, it was not able to be picked up by anybody. He is going to be on pole from the start of the session to the very end. Now he's got to convert that into a race victory. Now, the difficulty I always tend to find when you've dominated qualifying, that could be because you've got quite an aggressive qualifying setup on. And as such, you might not have anticipated it appropriately for the race. So we'll see how his tyres fare and how his strategy fares. There could be some more race-heavy setups moving on, and Canada is a long, long race. It is, what, 35 laps if I'm not mistaken? Or something like that?
Something like that.
It's long, that's my point.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to work out what was going on as the game was being extremely slow. As Alexander Johansson, actually, he's dropped out of the game. So he's going to have to try and quickly get back in.
He'll be back.
He'll be back. I'll be back, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would say.
Exactly. No need to worry.
So 109.26, which was replicated on the last run, is the fastest lap of today's qualifying. And to get an identical time on the dot is impossible to do. But Tomascal does it and made it look easy as well, even with traffic in the way.
Yeah, lots of traffic on his last run. That was the kind of obscurance that he was getting. Just people in his way. But they generally got out of it. He had to make a few choice moves on that back straight, but on the whole, it wasn't too bad for him. And obviously he had one lap that was completely impeded by the Williams on the final corner. That was looking to be quite a decent lap, but on the whole, I think we can say that qualifying session firmly goes to Tomascal, and the race is looking relatively dry. So no risk of there being any any rain for the time being. There is a bit of a dark cloud looming over the top of the pit straight, but we'll see whether that ends up coming in, because the weather can change very, very quickly in this F1 game, especially on the dynamic weather setting that it is set to here in PSGL. And as such, you can get a bit of an interesting turn of events. You might have no rain for half the race, and then all of a sudden black clouds ascend and it becomes absolutely torrential. Whether that's realistic or applicable or not, I've seen plenty of people complaining about rain at Abu Dhabi and Bahrain in the last week or two as well. That's the real danger here.
It is the real danger, but I guess we have to wait and see as the timer drops down. And we are about to race. There's going to be 5 lights. Put on your screen. Get the popcorn, because we're off and racing. It seems to be that at the AlphaTauri getting good starts, and that's not just one, it's both of them getting a brilliant start off the get-go, as round the outside, and Andre Molnar is trying to get past the Alpine driver, but Sven in 5th at the moment, trying his best to try and get past the Alfa Romeo, but all seems secure. As who's who spun? I think that's Barzo. Zamaro has spun and gone into the wall. He is still racing, so the safety car is not called out just yet. Sven Schumacher up the rear end of the Alfa Romeo, still struggling to get past. His next opportunity is into turn 10. Who's going to be lunging it in? I think it will be the Haas driver, but the Williams driver behind has a look. Nothing of it, but the Haas driver going side by side to the Alfa Romeo needs to be careful of the cutoff. And now, down the straight, where straight line speed is very key, has the Haas driver got it into turn 13? He looks, but no score.
Yeah, no score on that one. I feel like the hairpin there, Sven Schumacher just had a little bit more downforce on his car, was able to get the front tucked into the apex a little bit better, which made Thomas Lamminen kind of worry about the fact that he might have to cover off an attack from the Haas. But in these opening laps, I don't think we'll be seeing too much in terms of massive aggression from the drivers at the moment. Everybody, aside from QKS in 16th, is running the hard tyre to start. QKS is the one running the medium, and you can see that he's making progress up the field as a result of that. But for the time being, that's the end of Bartos Samaro's evening. A pretty poor qualifying, all things considered. That only gets made worse by dropping down the grid. Not the weekend that he'd have wanted here at Canada. But for the time being, we're still looking. We're still on board with Menno at the moment, who's held position off the race start despite a very vigilant attack from Andre Molnar. Menno has battened down the hatches and raced exceptionally well. Thomas Lamminen, I think, is also trying to look a bit punchy here, because I think he feels like he's under threat from Sven Schumacher. So, as they say, the best defense is offense, and he's going on the attack to Andre Molnar. Yeah,
Rashan trying to get punchy as well, getting past Lucas, but Lucas is fighting back and will retake the position back from Rashan. So it's a Red Bull 7 and 8, not numbers you usually see, for the two drivers. And Rashan not having the best of starts. That means I think now he's actually, no, he might have lost that position. So not a great start for the championship contender right now.
No, you really would have expected this guy to make up some more places off the start, but the Dutchman struggling a little bit here today. Not really had the best qualifying either. Felt like he had good pace coming into it. That's hence why he made that little tweet about wanting to win this race. But he's going to have to do a bit more than what he is currently doing. And unfortunately for Rashan, he is really expending his battery at quite an alarming rate compared to those around him. Of course, Lucas Hendrick, who he's been fighting with, has also been doing exactly that. But, you know, trying to make moves, you haven't really got much of a battery advantage. You don't have much of a pace advantage because you're on the same tyre compound as most of those around you as he goes for the lunge up the inside of the hairpin. It's a tight one. Now, who's going to get the better traction out of it? At the moment, Lucas Hendrick still has the position and has defended just well enough. A little bit of bump and grind going on. They're both going to try and draft each other down the straight, side by side, into the wall of champion chicane. It's going to be tight, but it looks as if the Ferrari man has got it sorted. Ferrari versus Red Bull, a tale as old as about 2010. And now it's going to be another attack trying to be mounted back by Lucas Hendrick in towards turn 1. He's got it nailed, but there's some defense off it. It's back on the flip side, and it's going to be Rashan holding position for now at least. They're going to remain side by side just down this little straight. That's going to be Lucas Hendrick tucking into the slipstream and just biding his time to see what comes of this one moving forward.
Yeah, and them two need to be careful because all this fighting, you see Rashan's at 0.9 of a second behind Andrew, the teammate of the Red Bull. It's danger zone there. You need to be, if you dip below that second, you don't have the defense when you're ahead. So all that work will be of nothing. And then you've got to use more ERS to catch back up. And you can see Rashan in that second zone. He's just crossed the detection point. Now we're just going to sit and watch. Has that Ferrari driver got DRS? There's the line. Ready? Yes, he just got it. He just can stay in this battle. And you get a double dosage of DRS down the straight. Because there's one detection point at the entrance of turn 10. And you get to use it from turn 12 to 13 and 14 to 2.
The difficulty here is going to be for Rishan, though, that he's still losing time hand over fist because the driver in front of him, Andrew Karapi, actually has DRS, of course, on Patrick Hadler, but more interestingly than that, has significantly more battery at his disposal. The only difference being here is you're going to see this sort of concertina up in the corners because when you're following another car, generally you have to brake just that tiny bit earlier to avoid going into the back of somebody. So you lose a little bit of time in the corners. Net overall, you get it back straight, of course, because the slipstream and the DRS. So Rishan here does not have to do that because he is so far behind, and he will at least be closing in just a tad, providing he makes no mistakes on these corners. Now, if he can keep that up and then get back in towards that kind of dangerous range where you have to brake a tad earlier, then he will be back comfortably inside this DRS train, and it seems as if he's already got that one sorted and nailed on down. It's Lucas Hendrick who is now at risk of losing out to that DRS position too.
Tumas, P4. He's getting a bit punchy. He's eyeing up Andre Molnet. He's thinking, you know, there's an opportunity to come off something as Lucas Hendrick gets a 3-second time penalty early in this race. So, not looking good for the Red Bull driver. But back to Thomas. As I said, he's pushing Andrea, and that's what you need to do. Molnar needs to really, you know, up his pace. He's 8 tenths behind Menno, and losing touch to the Alpine driver. So I'm not surprised that Tumas is going, you know, hey, you need to pick up your pace, or I'm gonna go past you. And to be honest, through the second sector, Tumas closes down that gap. I don't think that Alfa Romeo car has necessarily straight line speed, but the corners, he's fiery. That second sector is where he needs to do stuff.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it seems that he's made some really good progress, practically pushing that Alpha Tauri along through the hairpin there, but not quite enough. Still will just be a little bit too far adrift here to make anything happen, and of course Andre Molnar still has that DRS on Menno up ahead, so that won't be a problem this time around. Won't have to look too much in his mirrors here for the Alpha Tauri driver. And as such, it's going to be another lap stuck behind for the Finn at the moment. He's just going to have to hope that Menno and Gao can pull away enough to make this overtake just a little bit more possible for him. Looking at the battery situation for the pair of these two, there's about a 20% advantage for the Finnish driver in the Alfa Romeo behind. So whether that comes into play next time round on the straight, we'll soon find out, or whether he can pressure Andre Molnar into using yet more of his battery to make that overtake just a little bit easier. Is probably going to be the strategy devised up here by the Finn.
Tell you another driver who's getting a bit punchy. It's actually the person in second place, Menno. Menno's closed up to Thomas Gao, and Thomas, he's holding his own. He's holding a good race. You know, no major mistakes to our knowledge. Of course, we haven't been fully watching him, but he's not been... The gap's closed massively, or it's opened up massively. There's been none of that on the timing screen. So Menno putting his foot down, closing the gap. Is he looking to maybe make a move early on? I would highly doubt it. The position he's in is strong. Being in second place, and especially before the pit stop phase, is where you want to be, because make that move early. You have to use up your ERS. You have to use that as a defensive tool, rather than just using your DRS, where you can conserve your ERS, and then come the pit stop phase, just pop off and go. And Alexander Johansson, is he gone into the wall?
That's a crash at the Wall of Champions, probably very similar to what we've seen from Jane Tripkov in qualifying. Whether or not that'll be a safety car remains to be seen. At the moment, it's just a yellow flag in Sector 3, so whether that's all been cleared out or isn't going to be a problem... You can see, though, the car was just strewn across the track. In any other circumstance, that would have absolutely been a safety car. So, interestingly, that doesn't bring out the VSC even, and just remains as a yellow flag. So, a bit of an odd situation there. FIA continuing to smoke that Massey pack by the looks of things, but either which way, I think we're going to see a lot more of not just the crashing at that particular corner, but we're also going to see a lot more of 3-second time penalties coming up onto the board throughout the course of this race. Canada infamous for its track limits because of the issues with it being a chicane. And some of these chicanes you want to try and take as fast as you possibly can, and as such, you end up kind of cutting it a bit. You don't have that precision. Obviously, the F1 game is very lenient on track limits a lot of the time, but still not quite so lenient that it's going to provide you with all of the options. Now, Lucas Hendrick has just retired from the session. I'm not sure why. Went into the pit lane and just retired. Whether or not that 3-second penalty he thought was going to just ruin his evening, so it wasn't worth racing, I'm unsure. But hopefully everything's okay with him. But we'll focus our attention back up to the front. Not much is happening apart from the fact that Thomas Lamminen is right on the gearbox now of Andre Molnar. Less than 0.3 of a second, really pushing him to try and use as much of that battery as possible.
Yeah, Lamminen is going for it, and I said before that he's kind of given the hurry up to Molnar, but Molnar, he's not responding necessarily to Lamminen's pressure. He's just sitting tight, running his race and his strategy. So whether Molnar's thinking, right, if I do lose a second, it is what it is, because he's right on the cusp of it, and he's not responding accordingly. So there must be a strategy somewhere, as Jane Trickov, I think, has spun once again as these yellow flags in Sector 2. But what would you do? You know, you do a bit of racing yourself. As Molnar's position, would you put your foot down, close up to Minnow, or would you allow that second to erupt and just focus on your tyres?
I think at the moment, all that he needs to do is just hold station. As long as he doesn't lose DRS, that's all he needs to worry about. It is difficult to overtake around here, especially if you are in a DRS train, because the only real overtaking opportunity is that back straight with the DRS, or just got to defend into the hairpin, really. That's all you've got to do. And for me, if I were in his position right now, I'd be sitting quite comfortable in the knowledge that, okay, there's going to be nothing that I can do up until about the pit stop phase. So maybe I'd look to try and undercut, go in a lap earlier than everybody else, because again, that overtaking situation just becomes all the more difficult if you can remain in that DRS train. It's obviously, Menno is also sitting in that position right now. Nobody wants to be the leader, because then you'll cost yourself time by scrapping inevitably with the person in second place. So Tomascal is probably also quite comfortable in the fact that he is the leader at the moment. Menno will be lifting off in towards the final corner, not wanting to make the overtake just yet. I think we'll see most drivers just holding station for the time being. And when it comes to that pit stop phase, we'll probably see a bit of action.
Yeah, a driver to note. Down in P11, a beautiful driver named QKS did not have a good run. He did not, you know, perform all too well in the qualifying session. But a man we know can overtake and be punchy. We've seen that in the last 3 races. And he fails to disappoint. You can see on his screen, 7 positions up this man is. He's running on the medium tyres. He is still pressuring the drivers ahead. So Adelaide does need to be careful. And as well as championship leader Milan Mayer, who's down in P9, has got QKS on a rampage on those medium tyres. And to be honest, he's got a few more laps before those tyres really go off. So just to note and to keep an eye on him.
Yeah, absolutely. Those medium tyres have proven to be quite a lethal strategy, if you recall, over the last few rounds. Generally, those who go on them at the start make up quite a few places. One thing that is worthy of note here, though, for QKS, I really would have expected him to make more starting on those medium tyres than just the place that he has. Remember, he's got 3 places due to drivers DNFing, and the rest of his position gains have been admittedly overtakes. So he's up 7 positions, but you'd really like him to be in the top 10 before those tyres start to go off, and that will be, like you mentioned, about now that will start happening for him. So whether or not he gets held up by Nicola Aleda in 10th place remains to be seen. But he will be the one driver on the grid at the moment, definitely looking to try and make some aggressive progress Unlike, like I say, with everybody else who will likely as not be looking to hold station at present.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what he'd also really like is a safety car. We nearly had one at the Wall of Champions. Surprise, surprise. And I didn't do my predictions. How many more people are we going to see spinning at the Wall of Champions? My money, we've already had 3 technically. I think we're going to get another 2 out of that. I think we're going to have 5 today.
Okay, well, what remains to be seen. I think more than anything, you'll get people just eating the track limits penalty rather than just taking themselves into the barrier. Unless it is, of course, for position or a fight. What you might get on the last lap is a little bit of carnage. You might get some people trying to take it a bit too aggressive into that final corner, knowing it's their last opportunity, taking a last lap lunge. You might see a bit of that. But for the time being, we have got ourselves now divided up into a couple of distinct groups. We've got the fight from P1 down to P8, and then P9 up to P12. Milan Meyer has just not got the pace to stick with the back of this pack. And now, Rishan, his hopes of winning the race may just have been squandered there with that 3-second time penalty.
Yeah, and those can easily build up. We said this is still early phases of the race. You don't want to be having these penalties at this point. If it was near the end, maybe, okay, you might be able to get away with it. Gaps will start to form, but Roshan, he's not 3 seconds ahead of Milan Meyer, so critically, he's gonna lose P9 and possibly P10 as round the outside goes Andrew. But Roshan, you know, we've just said he needs to make a move and pick up the pace because of his penalty. He might be doing that himself as he looks to possibly make a move into turn 13. The Red Bull driver ahead of him, of Andrew, looks to the inside of Patrick Hadler, but Hadler holds stern. He keeps his position as they go through into now what would be turn 1. Is who's that bit further back? That's Milan Meyer being overtaken by Adelaide. So Adelaide saying, you know what, Meyer, you've been holding us up for way too long. I am done with this. It's time to go. But he has the flashing red light, so he can't really pull away. So that overtake was more for pride than it was for strategy.
Yeah, well, Nicola Aleda has been a bit accident prone this season. Was spun out, I think, in the opening race in Spain, and then didn't really have a very good time of things. So he'll be looking for a good result, and if he has got the pace, by all means, it's time to use it. DRS and ERS seems to be a bit of a problem, though, for the McLaren driver behind. Both of them flashing with red lights. QKS will, of course, be looking to get a little bit aggressive with them. But we're starting to see an interesting phenomenon happening here. I think at the front of the field, we had Patrick Hadler just driving in his mirrors a little bit too much, as it looks to me like QKS was looking at a bit of a move there on the medium tyres. It will start to be coming towards that changeover point now for the Aston Martin driver. So don't be too surprised if you see him diving into the pits in the next few laps. But for the time being, there is one driver in the pits. It's Thomas Laminen in very early for those hard tyres.
Very early. You would probably see QKS to go for the pit stop, but QKS is just been overtaken by Itz Van Nage, but down the inside, the Aston Martin driver still has a nose there. Gonna have to concede, and now is this the point you realise, alright, as QKS, should I pit now, take that earlier pit stop than what he'd probably planned, go to the hard tyre and try and punch in a few laps? But for Lamina, is this to try and draw the top bunch out to do a pit stop earlier than they expected? Is this like an undermining game he's playing?
Well, I mentioned before that I think it was going to get interesting when we got towards the pit stop phase, you know, in terms of who's going to go onto what tyres, or more to the point, who's going to go onto the medium tyres, when. And I mentioned that Laminen would probably be biding his time, same with Molnar, to potentially look for an undercut. But I think this is a bit early. I think this is a bit too early. I don't think you're going to see any one of these drivers diving into the pits yet. As I say that, though, Tomas Gal responds, Rishan also responds, with Andrew Karapi in front of him doing the same. Maybe Thomas Laminen has pulled the pin on this for them. Maybe these mediums really can go the distance, but there's a wing change happening here for Rishan. That's going to impact him, of course, with that 3-second penalty as well. That pretty much ends his race. We'll have to see what happens with these medium tyres, whether they can hold on or not. Our barometer, of course, will be QKS. He'll really be the one to show us just how long these mediums can hold up for.
Yeah, and I was just watching Thomas Galau and Laminen not really gaining much. So I don't think the initial undercut has worked all too well. He's finally putting in a purple on the first sector. Well, I say finally. He's put in a purple first sector, so those tyres finally warmed up. But I think it's been a little too long because that AlphaTauri, it's still holding ground. It's not over. Wait until, say, turn 13, and if that AlphaTauri's still ahead, then he's 100% got the position. Yeah, no, I can see from here. Yeah. He's got that position well, and Thomas will hold the ground as more drivers go into the pit. So we're going to stick with Thomas, focus mainly on him. How much has this undercut worked by pitting 2 laps before the rest of the pack? Here we go. What is he going to get out of this? DRS flap is open. It is the fastest lap of the race. And he has jumped a lot of drivers for net P2.
Yeah, what a horrible pit stop that ends up being for Andre Molnar, by the way. Not only does he lose out to Laminen, but he also doesn't make any progress on Menno and loses out to Andrew Karapi as well, of all people, who pitted a lap earlier. And of course, that tyre warm-up is going to make it really, really difficult for both Molnar and Sven Schumacher now. Thankfully, they have a decent gap behind them, but that's not going to be great for them. You just got to be careful now with this tyre warm-up that we don't see too many mistakes. We've still got some drivers out on track on the mediums, or sorry, on the hards. And interestingly enough, QKS is still out there on the mediums too. I'm really curious as to how long they're going to go for, whether they are a 20-lap tyre or not, because generally that would mean that the mediums would be doing the longest stint, and generally that isn't the case, of course. You'd expect.
He's staying out.
You know, logically speaking.
QKS is staying out on those medium tyres. So is this man...
and this is 20-lap tyre?
This is a bit of a long shot strategy. Is he trying to go medium to soft here?
No, there's surely no way. Those mediums would be screaming for their mother by the time you got to lap 20. There's no way that you could make those soft tyres continue to last for 15 laps either. They'd practically finish after 1 qualifying run. So I don't see that being the strategy here for QKS by any stretch of the imagination. I just think he'll have to really abuse the the hard tyres that he goes onto in order to try and stay relevant inside of this race at the moment.
You say that these are 1-lap tyres, these softs and all that, but I also want to talk about, you know, the medium ones. You know, we're questioning the I can't get my words out today. The life expectancy of these tyres. If you've got a very, very good setup, which I'm trying to poke McLaren Shadow's development driver, Harvey Cohen, for his Italian Grand Prix setup. If you can get the setup right, you can actually eke those tyres out for an entire race under 70% still, as he will pit. What's he going on to? Can you keep an eye on that?
It's got to be the hards. It's got to be the hards. There's no way it's not. Yeah, it is. It is the hard tyres for QKS. There was no way that he was going to be able to make a 2-stop out of this. If he was going to opt for the 2-stop, he would have had to have come in much earlier to get off those mediums. He had to have been stretching them for a reason. And as such, it is QKS now out in 13th place, practically back of the grid on these hard tyres. And I'm afraid that he won't be making up much time on them either, because the warm-up is going to be diabolical. And everybody else is on those much faster mediums ahead.
Andre Molnar, he's dropped, just to bring you back to the front of the pack. Andre Molnar, he's 1.2 seconds behind Andrew in the Red Bull, and critically, that's going to pain him a lot, as he was sitting in 3rd at one point, down in 6th. He's just dipped back in. I don't think it's in the right time, though. I don't think he's going to get DRS. And the person behind him is Sven Schumacher, who actually is dropping off as well. So he's not having good pace himself, and with a flashing red light. So the drivers are struggling on these medium tyres. I don't feel they're comfortable with the tyre themselves and not making the necessary push than you should be seeing by these drivers. As you can see just ahead of you, we talk about these drivers being in 1st, 2nd, 3rd. We've still got one driver who hasn't pitted.
I wonder if Morandix is going to do exactly what he did in qualifying and obstruct Thomas Gal out of a potentially godly lap. Well, we'll see if that ends up being the case here. Of course, there's still a 2-second gap, and it'll be an interesting study, really, to see how different these two tyre compounds are at the front of the field here with the P2 and P1 tyres. With these medium to hards, but it does look already like they are considerably faster. It's been 2/10 in just a matter of corners here for Tomascal, so I'd imagine that this is going to be looking at worse and worse for the likes of the hard runners as QKS and of course Brandix at the moment as the race goes on, and I can't imagine it getting any better for the drivers behind either, because the pace of these two up front at the moment seems to be nothing short of mercurial. Menno has burned almost all of his battery in this little attempt that he's trying to be putting on here. He's down below 10%. And as such, it's going to be a pretty difficult assault now that he's also got a 3-second time penalty to contend with too. Same with Andrew Karapi behind him. Really, the only drivers who are in contention for the podium now with these 3-second time penalties applied are the Haas driver, Sven Schumacher, Thomas Lamminen, and Tomascal.
Yeah, and they've got to stay extremely close, especially Schumacher. He needs to be with the pack. He can't let any of the drivers get away, because that will critically mean he won't get he won't be in contention for the podium if he gets too much of a time penalty, as Menno is going to try and maybe look to the inside. He has a little look, but you don't really see overtaking into turn 8. It's very rare. But turn 10 isn't out of the question. If he gets a good lunge, dives it in.
Here we go.
He looks to the inside, needs to be careful, because technically that Alfa Romeo can close the door, and he's entitled to. But going deep means he's now got a good run and a good exit off turn 10. And can he make the overtake into turn 13, where you can see as well Tomascal trying to get past the Alpine driver, dives out of the way, but that's held up the AlphaTauri driver, and you can see it's a three-way battle as Tomas is going to try his best to get past the AlphaTauri driver. Can't do anything through turn 1 or turn 2, but you can see the Alpine driver of Menno also trying to get fired up here. He's looking for any form of gap now through the second sector. It's not easy to overtake in second sector. If you're ballsy, you can put one into turn 6. Not really possible. But as they calm down just ever so slightly for a brief moment, turn 8 is the next likely place. Again, very unlikely. Turn 10 is where we're going to see the lunge, and then another run back up through to turn 13.
I think we might start seeing a little bit less happening now. All of these drivers at the front of the field have literally no battery remaining. It is the highest is 24% at the moment on Andrew Karapi. It's 9%, 11%, and 2% as we go from 3, 2, and 1. In fact, 0% now for Tomascal. So without DRS and without any battery, what does he have to defend with? Well, a 3-second time penalty. That's what he's got to contend with at the very least. And that now, if Thomas Lamminen can keep his nose clean, can keep his front wheels from dipping off the track, then he will be our race winner, because everybody aside from he, Sven Schumacher, and Nicola Aleda have a 3-second time penalty.
The pressure's getting to Thomas. It really, really is, and that's where you make the mistakes. You, especially into turn 13, you only take more of the corner when you fear that you're not getting enough pace. And we know Thomas has the pace. We clearly know that. He went pole, and he put in a brilliant lap time, so he shouldn't be worried. But it's the pressure of a driver behind you making you have an unenforced error. And you can now see the gap slowly forming. It got to 0.6 of a second. So, again, finding reassurance in himself, knowing that, yes, I can actually keep this going. That's what he needs right now.
Yeah, it is indeed, but I think that the bigger problem here is going to be the fact that he doesn't have DRS, so his ERS recovery will be hampered compared to that of his contenders behind. And honestly, if I'm Tomascal here, I'm going to be quite happy with just letting one of these guys by, so I can just sit behind for a bit, sit in P2, and then have all the cards to play when it comes to crunch time in these final 10 laps.
Yeah. You have to play smart here, you know, and it's something that really gets, I think, underappreciated in esports F1. There is a lot of strategy.
Hello. Thomas Lamminen is getting done over a little bit there by Menno. A bit of a dive in towards, I think that's turn 6 if I'm not mistaken, and that has really allowed now Tomas Gal to really bolt from the stable. The horse is out of the stable, and it's time to try and catch up, or try and lasso him back in towards his contention for DRS. Otherwise, this could be looking like a bit of a dangerous territory. Menno there got a little bit impatient, really wanted to have that position off of Thomas Lammen, and as such, it might cost them both big time if Tomas Gal is able to get away. DRS will be activated here for the Finn, and he will start to try and close up to the rear wing of Tomas Gal ahead. But the DRS isn't all that powerful. It's only a 10th and a little bit on this track because there's already so much downforce taken off the cars. You don't really need downforce for chicanes. They're not like long, sweeping, accelerating corners. You don't accelerate through them. You accelerate after them. So downforce isn't really massive. And as such, DRS doesn't have as big of an impact as it would on a track, say, like Hungary.
Yeah. What did Menno do? I wasn't watching that lunge, but impatient much? Absolutely. If he's got a good run, then hell yeah, why not make the move? I said it's a possibility into turn 6 if you've got good traction, but you know, it could happen, and that critically is, as I said, helped Tomas massively, but it's not helped him enough because he's still got sorry, not Tomas, Tomas Gal a lot. I've really confused myself now. Menno!
Deep.
Yeah, try to go for the lunge. Impatient much, but he will have a massive slingshot on the exit, so he might be able to recover the position back if he is lucky. But you know, the Red Bull driver, the Andrew, will not give that up. Into turn 13, Andrew has the inside line, but the Alpine will have the outside line, and Menno is safe for now.
Swings across the front nose of that Red Bull, basically said, back out or I'm gonna make you. And that's exactly what happened in the end. Karapi realized that he really didn't have many options there. Had to kind of get out of the throttle a little bit and let Menno go. Otherwise, it was going to be a bit of a disastrous moment for them both into that final chicane. But as it is, the front is now starting to space itself back out a little. I think Laminen really could do with just holding fire a little bit here, getting some energy back in towards his battery store, because Tomas Gal is burning it where and when he can. Just to try and make sure that he keeps a little bit of a margin and make sure that Thomas Laminen behind him isn't going to be taking all of that time out of him on the DRS straight. Once again, we're up to 9/10 of a second. Laminen really not having as fun time on these medium tyres as he once was on the hards, where he looks quite competitive. But that undercut might have also just been a little bit bad for those behind him too. You've got to imagine, right? He was fourth for a reason, just didn't have the pace to keep up, and now we're seeing that really in action here. We are potentially just over a lap away from seeing Laminen go out of Gal's DRS if it continues up with this form. But now the DRS is activated. Laminen has had to burn all of his battery once again to get back into a reasonable distance to Gal in front, and now really will need to try and put the hammer down to keep inside of this DRS where Gal has been so strong through the middle of the lap.
Yeah, I want to bring our attention a little bit back. So I've been watching some of the timings between Molnar, Schumacher, Hadler, and Andrew from P4 to P7. I know I said them in a weird order, but bear with me. With that fight between the top four, that naturally when you fight, you slow down a little, you're not going at full pace. This has allowed Molnar to close the gap and be within a fighting distance with Andrew. That being said, Schumacher wasn't on the pace of Molnar until now, and you can see the DRS train has widened from P1 all the way down to P7 as Hadler gets a fantastic exit. I said he had a fantastic exit. No, it was a very poor exit as he dropped back from Schumacher. But it's a P1 to P7 DRS train. Before then you get little subtle battles from further back.
Might be having a bigger battle here in a couple of minutes because Laminen is certainly going to lose DRS this time around. Had a bit of a moment at the Wall of Champions, just had to try and lift off to keep it from going into the wall. Morandix has run his race, he's into the pit lane. But that was, certainly a not fun experience for Laminen, and now really has to do a lot of work over the course of this lap to make sure he doesn't lose that DRS. He was under threat from Menno behind, who was looking dangerous once more. Menno, in his own right, has been saving a little more battery than these two front runners as well, so has a marginal advantage in that particular battle, that particular mind game going on. For now, though, Laminen will just about maintain DRS this time around. It has been a close battle, but he's had to push it and had to drain all that battery once again. So whatever he had built back up is now all but gone once more.
Yeah, a lot of work to do. It's going to be a lot of close. It's going to look close. I don't think really much of these drivers, and this is the way I see it, I don't think they're really going to pounce or do much as of right now, because they all don't have any ERS. The flashing lights are everywhere. We're about, what, 6 laps off the end of the race? I think that at this point they want to not necessarily slow down, but recharge their battery, try and not use their ERS as much, build up an energy reserve, and then deploy it at lap 34, 35, because right now they're all in the gutter, and as it will stand, they will stay like this because there's nothing for them to deploy. There's nothing for them to really attack with, unless you've got Daniel Ricciardo breaks and lunge it in at the last minute. So they've got to do something here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the something that Laminen is deciding to go for, and the same for Gal, is to burn their battery whenever they get the chance. So what was 6% quickly becomes 0% on this back straight for the pair of them. Meanwhile, you got the likes of Menno in 3rd place, who now has about 25% battery. It'll be even more by the time that he hits turn 1 and manages to recoup some of what he's lost in that slow braking zone. In the end, he's going to have about, well, already nearly 30% more battery than those around him. So he is in a prime position to take some real scalps at the end of this race, where Laminen and Gal do not have a response for him.
Schumacher also in contention to nick 2nd here. He is 1.8, so he needs to be extremely careful. Actually, he needs to close that gap to get 2nd, but 3rd for sure is in contention here, because Thomas Gale will still hold 2nd at this rate. Let's do the maths properly. Yeah. So at the moment, Schumacher will get 2nd if the timing stays as it is.
Well, I'm not so sure that'll be the case at the moment. Schumacher 1.8 behind, and it's 5 tenths, another 4 tenths, and another 3 tenths to get up towards the 3-second runners. Of course, that doesn't end up being a big factor, but if Schumacher ends up dropping back much further, it will be a worrying state of affairs.
And you can see on your screen, there's a lot of penalties up there, hence why we're saying about, the timings between them. It's still 3 seconds for the top lot. It's Van Nage and Rishan have both got 6-second time penalties, and you go and question how many warnings do they have left, as Milan Mayer is gaining a position onto Nicholas Adelaide, and that will be for position, as Schumacher has got himself a 3-second time penalty. So for the majority of these drivers, it's all racing amongst each other, and the only person then that isn't necessarily having to race is Laminen, who's sitting comfortably without a penalty right now.
Yeah, I do get the feeling now that Laminen may just only be 1 warning away. I mean, we've ran 31 laps, and for everybody to have a penalty and not him is exceptionally impressive, but you've got to imagine he's had at least 1 or 2 warnings in this entire duration of this race, just because it's so easy to do around Canada. And now 0% battery for Laminen as he pulls it down the straight. 0% battery about to be for Tomas Gal as well. And as such, if Laminen can just hold and keep his nose clean, not lose out too much with the DRS, and keep himself from getting that track limits penalty, then he will be okay, irrespective of what happens with getting passed by Menno and Karapi. He just needs to keep it tidy. That is the primary objective here for Laminen. I think at this point, Tomas Gal is not going to pull a big enough gap in 3 laps that it will be a problem if he loses DRS. So he just needs to make sure that he keeps everything nice and tidy, puts 1 foot in front of the other, and he should, being the operative word, should have a race win under his belt.
And commentator's curse will be activated now. Usually the case of what happens, but yeah, you're not wrong in what you're saying. It's all eyes are on Laminen, and he could nick this race off Thomas Gale, who's actually been running a fantastic race, and we don't want to take that away. You know, yes, a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Is there going to be questions to could he get it removed? We will see what will happen, because you don't know how this game will glitch out, or if it will, you know, give you a penalty when you don't believe it. There's going to be some questions, but Thomas Gal, what a race he's done. Kept it consistent. If he hadn't got that penalty, that would be a grand slam for him.
It would absolutely have been. Pretty much led the entire race from lights to flag at this point, but now we're starting to see Thomas Lamminen looking a little bit punchier on these tyres, and really did close in that gap towards the first sector, but lost it all there on the exit. And now Menno is coming for a move. We saw this one dress rehearsed a few laps ago. Lamminen's going to keep his nose in there, but now Karapi might capitalize on this one too. He slid up the inside. DRS activated for the both of them. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much for Lamminen. He still has that lack of penalty that will inevitably give him the race win, but he needs now to make sure that nobody gets too far ahead of him. He cannot afford for that 3-second gap to open up in any capacity to any of these drivers.
Absolutely, and you know, I feel he didn't really attack that, defend much in that corner, and hence why he, you know, as I said, he's in a good position. He's 1.4 from the leader. As I changed timings, as you can see, from the leader itself, so we can keep track of the Lamminen's progress. But he's fine. He can let that happen. He can allow these drivers to battle and not think much of it. So why not? And you know that the other drivers are going to squabble, because technically they're fighting for position here.
Yeah, and also a good thing for Lamminen here in these last couple of laps, if he's not careful, things could get very, very messy up at the front of the field. You have to bear that in mind. It could get dangerous. It could get scrappy. We could see a few banging of wheels and drivers just spinning out of the place, because these drivers all on 3 seconds will be recognizing the fact that they are all racing one another for position. Now, of course, the one person to keep your eye on is going to be Menno. He has slightly more battery. Andrew Karapi has the most of the leading trio with 37% as he gets on towards this back straight. So it's all going to be on this lap and the next. We're just about to finish lap 34, the penultimate time down this back straight. All that needs to happen for Lamminen to become your race winner here in Canada is he needs to not pick up a track limits warning, just needs to keep it clean. Wall of Champions, one more time to negotiate it for Lamminen now, and that's all that stands between him and victory, inevitably so. But what about the other podium places? How's this going to get shuffled out? Karapi with all the battery in the world to burn, Gal with no battery left to play with, and then finally right in the middle in the Goldilocks paradigm, Menno with it just right, 16% for him. How's it going to play out? We'll have to find out. DRS now soon to be activated for the first time on this lap, and it will be a tight one. They're all close together, Reese. It's going to be a big scrap in towards turn 8.
It's going to be a massive scrap into turn 8, and probably a bigger scrap into turn 10. I think that's where it's really going to unfold as we stick with Menno and we see the rear end of his car. Crappy is getting closer, and he's not going to be close enough for a lunge. The Alpine driver's not close enough for a lunge. So it's down to turn 13. The now or never corner with the exit of the Wall of Champions. The last corner to navigate for Lanham. This is all he needs to do, is not get a 2-second time penalty. He goes deep to the inside. Menno is going to go for the overtake. The AlphaTauri has to cut the corner. He's going to get a penalty for it, but Andrew Crappy will overtake Manu on the line, and Lemon will win the race. But what a last lap confussal. Wow. Crappy Andrew just comes out of nowhere, says thank you very much, you two are gonna fight, and I'm just gonna pick up the remaining pieces.
Well, I gotta say that Karapi really did force their hand there. He was coming at them with some real vitriol. Of course, having all that battery in reserve, he just plowed on down that straight, switched to the left-hand side of the track, then switched back to the right. Menno had to react. Of course, then Andre Molnar and, Thomas Gal had to react, who ended up picking up another time penalty and went from being in contention for the podium to, I think, finishing outside the points. We'll see if that penalty ends up getting removed, of course, because he kind of was forced away from the corner by Menno. But what a conclusion to the Canadian Grand Prix here in Tier 4. An absolutely fantastic race that really does only get settled in the final corner with some drama to sort itself out. Laminen drives the cleanest race imaginable and, of course, gets himself the victory. Congratulations to the Finnish driver.
Yeah, congratulations indeed. And a performance that he should be happy for. And to bow his head as he sits on top of the podium. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, your current standings. Of course, we're going to be looking at that final lap, seeing if the penalty is worthy or not, and see how much that changes. But even so, you have to really look at where the front wing was, who was ahead, because this will go down to technicality and rules nonetheless. Milan Meyer down in P7, our current champion at the moment, only gaining, 6 points?
Hold on a minute. Tomas Gal got 24 seconds or 23 seconds of penalties or something on that final corner.
Ooh.
He ended up with 26 seconds of penalties, so got 20 seconds. That's mental.
Yeah, I think some of those are going to be removed and he's going to be promoted back up a few positions. I don't think all 26 will stand. I think a couple will stand. Maybe a 3 second for sure. Or a 5, because 5's usually given out for a cutting corner. But 26, hell nah, man. That's way, way, way too much.
Yeah, it's definitely out of the remit. But either way, that was a cracking race, and I'm glad we got to spectate it towards the end there. It was a bit of a slow burner in the middle, but what more do you want than a diverse finish? Well, I think next time we're going to have a slightly less exciting race, by the way, Ruiz. I think it's Monaco. Next week, which well, prepare your pillows. It might be time to go to sleep for a week.
I am definitely gonna grab a pillow for that one. Monte Carlo is just one of the hardest tracks to overtake. Why is it even on the calendar? You know what, PSGL? I'm gonna rant about this for a few minutes. Why is it even on the calendar? It's useless. Why is it even on the F1 calendar? It's just because it has heritage. That is it. Get it off the calendar.
All right.
Get it off the calendar. All right.
I understand your point about getting it off the calendar, but there is obviously a lot to be said. You know, it's a race of history, of course. It's got the qualifying aspect to it, and the qualifying session will inevitably be quite fun there at Monaco. But on the same point for us here, there's not really a lot of overtaking in league racing generally, so I don't know how we're going to expect there to be overtaking at Monaco. Maybe we'll see some just absolute carnage, demolition derby, lots of desperation out of people, but maybe. Who knows? Either way, you can find out with us next week, same time, 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Central European time, and we'll see you then.
Enjoy, and have a great day.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.